Hello, you beautiful people. Welcome to the Marcy's Magic Podcast, where I, your host, Marcy, will be talking to you all about your spiritual evolution, God, love, and so much more. So, in today's episode, I'm going to talk to you about your relationship with God. As over the years, my relationship with God has definitely completely changed. It's only been in the last maybe year and a half, 2 years that I actively started describing my relationship with the universe as a relationship with God. And in the more recent months, I have started reading the Bible, become a follower of Jesus, but I am in no way Catholic or Christian. So I would like to really dive into that further because that has sparked some questions and interest among my audience on Instagram. So let's dive in. So, my idea of God is that to me, God is our creator. It's the limitless source of energy that we're all connected to in the day to day, every day, right now, right this moment. There's a piece of God within you, within your soul, within your spirit, within your heart. I see God, particularly if we're looking at the word descriptions, as the umbrella term for everything that there is in the universe. So I'm talking about the different energies, different timelines, different places. So, for example, I'm a Reiki healer. I also do Akashic Records. So, Akashic Records is an energetic library within the universe that everyone can have access to, but essentially it has all the information about your past lifetimes, your current life, as well as any future timelines. So I do a lot of Akashic work for myself and for my clients. I'm also a tarot reader. Now, all these modalities, let's say, the very different types of energy, they draw on different aspects of the universe. They provide I guess similar-ish results, but in very different ways. But what I want to say ultimately is that I still see all of it as working with God. Before I join a client call, I always say a prayer and I ask God to come in and support me in the session. So I don't actively see myself as the person who has all the power. I see myself as the person who becomes the channel of that energy, whatever frequency or type it is that God wants me to use. I did used to say universe, but it just didn't feel resonant with me because I feel that it wasn't given enough praise to the creator. I feel like it was very limited, even though of course the universe is completely limitless. It just wasn't resonating with me anymore. And I've noticed that since switching to describing my relationship with our creator to describing it as God, that gets a lot more reactions from people because, for example, for people in Poland, where I come from, religion is really big, really shoved down our throats from an early age. Like, for example, the lessons of religion in school are very different from the religion classes in the UK, where I went to a Catholic school in the UK, but we still learn about all religions. It was more about more moral teachings, teaching you about faith and different cultures, whereas, yeah, religion classes in Poland are very much lessons of Jesus, the Bible, and if anyone had a different view from usually be like a nun or a priest or someone who's like a really devoted Catholic teaching these lessons, they would be in trouble basically. Yeah, there's a whole lot of stigma. So essentially, I've had a lot of negative reactions, and it doesn't affect my relationship with God, but it's been an interesting observation to see, because essentially it all stems down to what you associate God with. I think it's absolutely normal that people jump to the religious ideas, and see God as this father in heaven who is super masculine and has all the power to punish us and he's going to judge us, and that's sort of the general vibe across the different religions. And I do like the idea of seeing the creator as this masculine energy, but I do reject the idea of religion. I did grow up Catholic, and actually I liked it. I used to take myself to church when I was a kid, or I used to drag my granddad with me. I was baptized, I had my Holy Communion, but that's just what you do, what you did in those days in Poland, you know? But then after that, I chose to expand my faith. There was no one, my family's not particularly religious, or spiritual in any kind. Um, and yeah, then essentially I sort of just grew out of it. I moved to the UK when I was 12, and yeah, I did go to a Catholic school, but and I always had some kind of a faith. I knew there was something there, but I never really felt the pull to start exploring that further in a way that is particularly focused on religion. Interestingly enough, I have welcomed Jesus into my life. So, about 2 years ago, I had a very intense mushrooms trip, and it was a New Year's Eve party at my friend's flat, and it was so intense that I had to go back home before midnight and just do the trip alone because having conversations with people was beyond me. It was so fun. But I remember being curled up in bed and having this divine, holy presence of Jesus there. And ever since, he's been a recurring theme in my life. And I've been feeling a massive pull towards reading the Bible. So I've started doing that. And I really enjoy it. It does make me feel much more connected to the creator, because something that I love about Jesus is that I see him as the human representation of the divine. Like, yeah, the divine within the humans. Like, he is the source of God on earth. And I believe that we all have the power to follow his steps. And what I believe about religion is that not everything, maybe some of these events that they speak about in the Bible, such as where they divided a couple of loaves of bread and two fish into like thousands of people. Maybe that did happen. We're not going to know, but I think the story's in there and not meant to be taken as literally, but seeing at how they apply to our own spiritual well-being and what they mean for us personally. I do think it's important to understand the context of Jesus and Jesus's time, and sort of understanding his life, the locations, the quality of life, his friends, the general everyday events, in order to actually understand what the passages were trying to convey at that time, to be able to interpret it in your own way, but be humble enough and recognize that they are also trying to tell you something that is probably not within your mind just yet. So I've been reading this book called Jesus the Pilgrimage. It's written by this priest that I do not remember the name of, but it taught me a great deal about understanding the context of Jesus and, yeah, the times of Jesus, which I'm going to put the name of the book in the description. What I love about having welcomed Jesus into my life is that it does it helps me to feel more divine in that every day. It helps me to make better choices. And I wear a necklace cross, and to me, that is a representation of the sacrifice. Since I've been wearing a cross necklace, which has also been for the last sort of just over a year, it reminds me to continue being the woman of God that I am, to continue being the woman of nature that I am, in order to be of service to God, to be the person, the caring, loving person that God wants me to be. And in understanding the context of Jesus' time and welcoming that into your life, I think it's really important to be really humble and grateful, which is what reading the script and welcoming Jesus into my life allows me to do, because I think that as spirituality grows within the society today, it's become incredibly personalized and incredibly selfish. Personalized is not that bad of a thing, but essentially there's everyone left, right, and centre trying to manifest whatever they want, and to an extent, it's turned into this huge attachment to outcomes, huge ego-driven responses to get to a certain place, and failing to consider that sometimes God has a different plan for us. And that's really harmful, because when you're so attached to the outcome and you're doing everything towards it, you close yourself off from listening to those cues that you're meant to be on a different path, or that maybe you're meant to be looking at something a little bit differently. So then when there's moments of rejection, redirection, or the progress is being slowed down and whatever, we go into this state of shock and overwhelm, and the ego's like, why me? Like, what's happening? Which is why I really feel that welcoming Jesus into your life is something that can help you to be really humble and grateful while still continuing to expand. But again, I do reject the idea of religion, because to me it has always felt incredibly secluded and limited. So I feel that one aspect of it is that it makes it easy to lose your identity in it, because it's all about surrendering it all to God. And while I do a lot of that, a lot of the religious teachings are all about completely surrendering everything, like your entire identity, your whole being, and who knows, maybe in a few months' time, maybe in a year or two or whatever, I'll have a different opinion on it. But I really believe that having a sense of identity is important, because essentially, yes, you are a divine being, but you're a divine human, and part of your human lesson is to be able to navigate the world as you, to be able to use your gifts. Like, yes, they are God given gifts, but they are individual and personalized to you. And what can happen if you reject everything that's within you in the name of surrendering everything to God? That can really throw you into quite an identity crisis, identity disconnection, where you don't know who you are. And how are you meant to navigate the world feeling stable, secure, connected, and trusting of yourself, and trusting of those intuitive nudges and the messages that God is giving you, when you feel like you have surrendered all your power to God? One thing that is always important to consider when it comes to power and choice, I'm a big advocate of the fact that you actually don't have control, because essentially God, your creator, is the person that has the final say. God is the one that knows what's going to happen for you next. God is the one that will provide the next things for you. And you can choose to go against it, or you can choose to go with it. You're not a you're not just someone who's completely mindless. To me, spiritual maturity is about co-creation with God. So that you're still striving towards enlightenment, faith, love, being of service, being a divine human and a person of God, a person that's fulfilling their soul contract and soul lessons, while still being open and humble enough to know that God knows better, and there's times where they'll want to redirect you and send you somewhere else. Another important thing to add is that I am a woman of God. I feel incredible within my feminine power. I am here to heal. I am the ultimate creator. And a lot of religions act like women don't exist, and that is so painful to me. Because, for example, the teachings of Mary Magdalene are much more mystical and spiritual, yet you literally never hear about them. Everything that's included in the Bible is all written by men, and there's a lot of controversy, and that's why so many people don't know about it, because her teachings are about the inner spiritual world over the external rules. So instead of it saying you need to follow these certain rules in order to meet God, have eternal peace, etc., her guidance is a lot more around leading with faith and love in your life over fear and guilt. And when I found that out, I felt so emotional, because this is like faith and love is what encompasses a lot of my work. I don't believe that you should be changing your behavior from fear or guilt. So let's say you're someone that has a lot of very casual sexual relationships. To me, that is incredibly harmful to spiritual well being, right? And maybe it comes a point where you realize, yes, this is really harmful, no longer aligned with what I'm doing, etc. When you're doing it from a place of faith and love, you're doing it as an act of service to yourself and God, and that can only have positive outcomes, because the energy that's driving the behavior change is pure. Whereas if you're changing your behavior based on being punished or feeling like it's something that's forbidden, then it's only going to generate more anxiety. And it's so sad to me that people hold this idea of God, and it's not at all your fault. It is how we've been raised, how we've been conditioned to believe that, when you do things wrong, you're going to be punished. But in my opinion, God is not here to punish you. And which just got a psychic shiver. Yes, there's a lot to say about sin, but essentially, sin is something that represents a negative consequence that you're going to have to bear on the other side of your actions. It doesn't mean that you're going to be harmed or punished as a result of doing something wrong, because it's about the faith and love that God has for you. And I think it's that faith and love energy that Mary Magdalene speaks about that leads to that spiritual maturity, where you have a continuous co-creative relationship with God, where you can continue being of service to God and the people around you while maintaining a sense of who you are and what you're here to do, and feeling confident in that. Because why would God want you to doubt yourself when He's literally created you in His image? So of course He wants you to take the credit. Take the credit for the work that you've done, because you didn't have to do it. Just because He's telling you to do it, it doesn't mean that you have to listen. So that is the element of spiritual maturity, in my opinion, because if we do compare our relationship with God as a relationship with, let's say, that we have with a parent. So obviously, there's a certain time in a life where we need a support of a caregiver, right? But then we grow up and we don't really need them as much anymore. Yes, it's great if they're there, but we don't need them to feed us. We don't need them to help us get dressed. But hopefully, that relationship is something that we know we can come back to whenever we need to. So it is the same process of maturing spiritually as it is maturing as a human. And it's built on trust. It's built on the knowing that you can come back to that relationship. But that brings me on to my next point, which is incredibly crucial, because why are you only coming to God when things are going wrong? Period. Like, if you had a friend who was only coming to you whenever something was going wrong, right? And they were just complaining, you would probably reach a point where it'd be like, oh my God, do something about it. Especially if it was a friend that just, listened to your advice, but then went and did the wrong thing anyway. You would probably feel a bit drained. And I'm not saying that God's going to be annoyed with you, but I do think that we need to be coming to God with our hearts full of gratitude, because you forget that the reason why you're not coming to God, no, you forget that the reason why you don't need to be coming to God when things are going well is because God has provided these things for you. God is there protecting you every step of the way, and He's always there. So we should be continuing to nurture that relationship with God when things are incredible. So I'm going to leave it here for today. I would love to hear from you about your relationship with God and how that changes, as well as your views of spirituality and religion, and where you stand with it. So, as always, drop me a comment or drop me a DM on Instagram, and I'll see you in the next episode.